You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we'll be getting wet and wild with our FAB Fact.
We are running for our lives in the Randomiser.
and we'll be getting graphic with designer Matthew Clark
Ooh, that's all coming up in Pod 115.
of the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Oh,
Well, are you
I'm
excited?
A bit full. No, but I'm still a bit bloated, actually.
From?
Well, from the cream tea I've just had prior to recording this podcast.
And
so you'll have to...
What number cream tea is this this week?
Well, this week, might be the third. Might be.
And, of course, you're talking on the day of release, so that's a Monday. So you've had 3 cream teas on Monday already. Richard James, you disgust me. Now,
you know you would if you could.
Of course I would. I've got no clotted cream, sadly. Now, I'm Jamie Anderson, and you are...
I'm a very large, or rather feeling quite large, Richard James.
Well, you're quite tall as well.
That's true, I can bear it, can't I?
We are your hosts for the Gerry Anderson podcast, and later on we'll also be joined by another person whose name is Chris Dale, also known as the Randomiser General,
Yes.
or Archbishop Randomiser.
He has
Maybe.
never been known as Archbishop Randomiser until this moment.
Until now. Yes.
That's right.
Anyway, Richard, what's coming up?
Well, we've got all the usual stuff, I'm very pleased to say. We've got some
a surprise.
facts coming up, yes, very shortly. Some news from the worlds of Gerry Anderson, of course, because there's always new stuff happening. And we also got part 1, or no, not part 1, because I think it's a one-off, is it? Or is it a...
No, it's part 1, you're right.
Is
I wish
it?
you did read ahead of these scripts,
done.
you know.
No, I'm terribly sorry. With designer Matthew Clark. So Jamie will be talking to him a little later on. And we have had a bumper crop of emails from our lovely Podsterons, our lovely listeners. So this week it's all about them, and I shall be reading out their emails that they've been sending in to podcast at Gerry Anderson Podcast. No.
You've only been doing it for 115 weeks, don't worry. It's actually podcast at gerryanderson.co.uk.
That's it, thank you. It's all that jam I've been eating. It's starting to ferment. I think it's turning alcoholic. So yes, do send in your questions and comments so we can read them out. Also, people have been tweeting us, hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast, tagging me, Richard N. James, him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and him just over there, just jacking up that car there to change the tyre, Chris Dalek. And, of course, they've been having fun and games on our Facebook page. That's a group, which is facebook.com/groups/Podsterons. But so many emails this week, I'll be concentrating on them and them alone for now.
Right, so all the Facebook goings-on will remain private.
Well, you
unless
better
you're
join
there.
them. Yeah, exactly.
And,
Better join the group.
and how do they join it?
Well, I think it's quite easy. You just go to the page, you answer some questions. They're not trick questions. They're just things like, do you agree to treat each other
nice.
with respect, to be nice and have fun and all that. And once you're through that, you're in, really. Join in.
Simple as that. So
Yeah, it really
if you
is.
haven't joined already, then you're missing out. The only other thing that I would be very disappointed if you haven't done already, dear listener, if you haven't yet left us a review and a rating.
Oh, yeah.
I would really, really appreciate that. And also, Richard, I'm throwing not a spanner in the works. What's a good version of a spanner in the works?
Oh, what do you mean a good version? Oh, I see. Maybe a dollop of jam onto the clotted cream?
Oh, right, okay.
Hey.
Here is my jammy dollop. Right, listener, first of all, please do leave us a rating and a review. I would really appreciate that. Second of all, whatever you're listening to this on right now, take a screenshot
Oh,
and post it on Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast.
right.
And a week from today, on the 29th of August, I will pick one of you random posters of that screenshot to win a prize, a small prize bundle taken from my office.
Cool.
And it'll consist of some bits and pieces, maybe a limited edition Thunderbirds LP or a CD
Right.
soundtrack, depending on the winner's preference.
Right.
A few other bits and pieces. So take a screenshot of you playing the podcast on your phone, tablet, computer, whatever. Post it to Twitter and or Instagram, and I will pick one winner. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll pick one winner from Instagram and I'll pick one winner from Twitter on the 29th of August.
Wow.
Just make sure you include the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast and get posting. Thank you muchly.
Oh, very good. That's great.
Right. There you go. Well, now we've offered to give them a prize.
Yeah, do you think they'll stay with us now?
Well, they will, because coming up right now...
What? Oh, no, you're not going to put them off, are you?
It's Fab Facts.
Joy.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
It's the listener's favourite, and mine, but not yours, but maybe Chris Dale's too. It's Fab Facts. I've got a book of Fab Facts. I'm going to flick through the book. Richard's going to shout Fab at a random point, and on that page will be a Fab Fact, which you're going to find quite fab. Are you ready, Richard James?
Always ready.
Then here we go.
Fab! Hey?
Well, we've landed in proto-prime Anderson era.
Right, okay.
I'm not sure that's actually the word I mean, but I'm going to use it for now. It's the era of Stingray.
Oh, yeah, I love Stingray.
So, Richard James, as you will know from shows like, well, certainly Supercar and Thunderbirds, and definitely Stingray, but also probably for Scarlet and beyond, and even Joe 90 and Secret Service, there are lots of underwater scenes.
Yes.
They present a particular problem, because actually putting stuff in water, well, that's a bit difficult. So one of the great bits of evolution of the Supermarination era was to work out how to film them without getting everything wet, and that was by shooting them through a fish tank.
Yeah.
So for the most part, puppets and models actually only got wet if it was on the surface of the water, either going in or coming out or just floating. Mm. But all the iconic stuff of that Supermarination era was done through a fish tank. The most iconic image, I think, of those early attempts at doing this underwater filming is a fantastic shot of Stingray emerging from the ocean door with a huge burst of bubbles coming out from behind it.
Yes. I know the one.
So if the bubbles are behind, and I think there's some in front too, then surely Stingray must have been underwater. Certainly we get this question a lot. How did they do that shot? But amazingly, no. Stingray was not in the water. Instead, that shot was achieved much in the same way as any other shot of Stingray underwater, by flying the model on wires through the ocean door with an aquarium in front of the set.
Yep.
But inside that aquarium is a matte painting of a rock face that takes up much of the right-hand side of the shot. You with me?
Got you.
And at the point where the edge of the painting lines up with the right of the ocean door is a tiny, tiny little air nozzle painted in the same colour as the edge of the ocean door.
Aha.
It is that nozzle that is producing bubbles, but the moment happens so fast and the whole thing has been set up so accurately and skillfully that your brain is fooled into thinking that they are coming out of the ocean door.
Yeah, nice. Very good.
So Stingray, as you know, currently is only available in standard definition. And those DVDs were released 20 years ago, and the quality of the transfer isn't particularly marvellous, so it's pretty tough to see how that effect was achieved. It was, in fact, perfectly hidden on original transmission in the standard definition version. But if you can't quite work out how all this lines up, even looking at those standard definition ones, just look at the top right of frame. And just after Stingray leaves the ocean door, you should be able to spot a little fish swim behind the matte painting.
Aha, right, okay.
So that gives it away. And then from there, if you follow it down, just take the edge down all the way of the painting, back down to the airline, you'll see it just by the ocean door there.
Okay, very clever.
It is a fantastic bit of effects work. So clever, so beautifully done.
Yes.
Massive credit to Derek Meddings and the effects team of Century 21, because it is incredibly effective. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I have a special way of making bubbles in the bath, actually, but I won't... I won't go to that now. No? Please. Not now? No, okay, I'll leave that. Fine.
No, it was all going so well.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Were there any underwater scenes in Space Precinct?
No, we didn't do underwater scenes in Space Precinct.
Why not?
No, the closest we got was Charlotte seeing Take That in the water tank at Pinewood. Yes.
Oh, yes. Very famous happening during the same time.
That's right.
Yeah, it seems a bit weird that there were no water-based episodes.
Yeah, no, I should imagine that would be proved too costly and worrisome, wouldn't it, really? I don't know how you do that.
Oh, maybe. I just would have thought on Altor you'd have maybe a race that lived underwater, and it had all the docks and stuff.
Sure, that's true. So yeah, you'd think.
Maybe in the future, maybe for a future season of Space Precinct, Richard, you never know.
Maybe that we're all waiting for. Yeah, that could happen.
Anyway, that's not going to happen quite yet, but I think we are at the very end of this week's
Bubble Fact. Yay, there we go. Love it. That is interesting. I mean, I love Stingray. It's the colours, isn't it? They're so vivid. That's what strikes me.
Well, yeah, and the philandering. By Troy Tempest, that too. I know it is brilliant, but that's that they were trying so hard and colour was so new to them into the shooting with it that it lends a particular sort of intensity to the whole thing.
Yeah, it really does.
Lovely Stingray. I do hope we get a Blu-ray soon.
That would be nice. Yeah, just in time for Christmas would be good. Hint, hint. Anyway, now you're
it'll be
listening.
Christmas next year at this rate.
All right. To the Gerry Anderson podcast. Now, we have, as I said earlier, had lots and lots of emails to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and I'm going to read some of them out now. For example, Jenny Davies says, hi, Jamie and Richard. I mean, that's a bad start, but okay. I hope you're both well and keeping safe during these strange times. Well, likewise, Jenny. She says, my name is Jenny Davies. I'm 21. I live in Staffordshire in England, and I've been a big Gerry Anderson fan since I was very young, with my favourite Anderson shows being Thunderbirds. And my other favourite shows are both original and CGI versions of Captain Scarlet, and also Stingray and Joe 90.
Oh. It was all going so well.
All right. When I can, she says, I do listen to the podcast and I enjoy them a lot. I'm also a member of the Podsteron group on Facebook. That's good to hear. Now, while being furloughed during lockdown, I found an old story I started writing when I first started high school, but never finished. As I didn't have much to do, I decided to finish the story as well as improve on the original idea I had. The story is called Rosie the Brave and is about a young girl called Rosie Wilson, who is a member of International Rescue who gets captured and ransomed by the Hood, and the Tracy family have to think up a plan to save her before it's too late. I've shown it and read it to many of my friends in the podcast group, and they all really liked it. And I thought you both would like to read it too and be able to give me your feedback on the story. The story's in 4 parts, as it's quite big, so I thought I'd send you part 1 of the story just to give you a bit of a taster of what the story's about. It'd be really great if you could read the story out of the podcast, but I understand if you aren't able to fit it in with your schedule. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. Kind regards, Jenny Davies, a fellow Anderson and podcast fan. Well, thank you, Jenny. Yes, I did have a look at that. It's really very nice. We often say, don't we, that one of the great things about our fan base, the Podsterons, is that they're such a creative lot, and they turn their hands to many different designs and writing and puppetry and all sorts of stuff.
A bit of everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, really nice of you to send that in. Thank you. And you can see it, dear listener, if you pop over to the Facebook group there and join in, you'll be able to read it there. Also, Matthew Black from Auckland says, Anderson shows I like the least. This is following on from our discussion a couple of weeks back. He says, for me, it would be Terrorhawks. I've only watched about 4 or 5 episodes and just could not stand it. The style of the puppets to me just looked a bit creepy. I thought the voice acting was written and directed to be over the top and campy. Yes, it was aimed at kids, but the older Anderson shows could be watched by adults as well. To me, Terrorhawks just seemed to try too hard. Almost like a second-rate anime, but transferred to puppetry, like nails going down a blackboard. All right, Matthew, all right. And he finishes off by saying, I'm sorry if that upsets any big fans of the show. It's just my opinion, after all. Well, that's okay, Matthew, because I did ask. So, yeah, interesting.
You did take the can opener and apply it to that vessel of worms, didn't you?
I think it's... Terrorhawks was so different, wasn't it, really, in terms of style of things that had come before, that maybe people weren't quite prepared to give it the sort of time and energy and commitment that they gave to the previous Super Marionation marionette shows.
I was recently having a discussion with our podcast friends, the Benji and Nick show.
Oh, yes.
And Benji, Nick and Shelley over there watched a Terrorhawks episode a couple of weeks ago on their podcast, and they were quite scathing about it.
Okay.
So it's clearly not for everyone, but I said to them, you're watching this through a lens that has been crafted and polished by watching Thunderbirds, and so it instantly distorts it in a slightly unpleasant way. But as you know, Richard, I'm a huge fan of Terrorhawks.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Joe 90. Neither of those things means that anyone else has to like or loathe either show.
No, as we
which
often
is
say.
the beauty of Anderson fandom.
Yeah, exactly. And finally for now, David says, "Hi all, I wondered if there would ever be the possibility of new and updated Anderverse action figures being produced, similar to those released in the early 90s by Matchbox and Vivid Imaginations, either in classic 3.75-inch or the newer collectible 6-inch figures. Just a passing thought, seeing as Big Chief Studios are releasing the 1/6 scale figures. Keep up the good work. SIG," from David.
Yeah. I think this is probably a good point to make a rather boring set of observations, if I may.
Oh, go on then. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Well, quite often we get really lovely suggestions. Oh, it would be great if you did X, Y, Z. Things like this,
Yes.
set of action figures, or somebody wanted a Zuni the Lazoon action figure recently.
Right.
Fireball XL5. Now, obviously, anything like that has to be commercially viable. It's a bit of a gross, sickening word, isn't it? But in order for us to keep doing things like the podcast and everything else, at some point, a business has to make money, basically.
Of course.
It's weird, isn't it? But it does.
Yeah.
And for making something like an action figure, there's a huge amount of prototyping and tooling costs that go into doing that. Then to make that work, you have to be fairly sure that you can sell, let's put a number on it, 25,000 of the action figure to make it all work commercially.
Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty sure that if we did a Zuni the Lazoon action figure, it's not going to sell 25,000 units.
Yeah, maybe not.
But even for, I don't know, if we did another show, we took, let's say Little Joe 90.
Yeah, bless him.
If we did a Joe 90 action figure, again, I can guarantee you that will not sell that number of units.
Yeah.
And so therefore it becomes almost impossible to do things like that. So we do investigate these things as much as possible. And I'd love to have a full range of Anderson action figures out again. Wouldn't that be marvellous,
Of
Richard? And we can even have an Officer Orin.
Yeah, we could even have a Richard James and Jamie Anderson podcast action figure ensemble, couldn't we?
And Chris Dale.
Yeah, and Chris Dale, of course, yes.
Of course. But no, it's very unlikely to happen. But we're always looking at new ways to do it. And obviously things like 3D printing and rapid prototyping, there is potential for those things in the future. So stand by, but mostly for inaction.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, all right. Well, all for now. I'll read out some more emails a little later on. But that'll do for now.
Okay, well, until that moment, I think we should fill the void with the Gerry Anderson news. Go on, Richard. What is it?
Can I?
Yes, please. Go on.
News.
Oh, a little extra flourish there. That was quite nice. Anyway, here we go. Yes, it's the Gerry Anderson news. First up this week, surely lots of you have been watching BritBox. Well, if you're in the UK, almost certainly you will have been if you're a Gerry Anderson fan, because BritBox are now carrying a massively expanded Gerry Anderson collection as part of their Out of This World collection. That includes all episodes of Thunderbirds, including Pod 4 Films' 3 anniversary episodes, which are there in all their high-definition glory. There's Captain Scarlet. There's UFO and the Space 1999, all complete. And I'm pretty sure they'll be adding some more stuff soon.
Yes,
you can get a free trial on BritBox for 30 days, which will give you plenty of time to watch the whole lot if you want to do it for free and then not carry on. That's fine by me. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do that, but it's an option. You just go to britbox.co.uk and there's a free trial option and you can enjoy everything, including those Thunderbirds anniversary episodes, which I know so many of you have wanted to see for so long. Well, let's go from something which is very clearly defined to something which is a bit of a mystery. We've introduced something on the Gerry Anderson store called a mystery box. If you have never purchased anything before, but you're dying to start your Gerry Anderson collection, the mystery box could be something for you. It's a box containing 70 quid's worth of unknown Gerry Anderson items from multiple series, multiple different types of products. I would recommend, if you have a collection already, probably not for you because you don't want to double up, because it is a surprise. But if you want to dive into the world of Anderson, it's 70 quid's worth of stuff for £19.99. Well worth it, great value, and a super selection to get your collection started.
Yeah.
So pop over to shop.gerryanderson.co.uk if you want to grab one of those. There are only 40 left at this particular time of recording, so stand by for that being out of stock. If you'd like to watch some free stuff, then there's a brand new episode of Classic Terrorhawks on the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel, First Strike. Go to youtube.com/GerryAndersonTV, and we're still putting up our feature content every Saturday morning at 10:30 UK time, so go and do that. I know it's only August. I know it sounds a bit weird, but this coming weekend, the official, the only, the exclusive Thunderbirds Christmas jumper is going up for pre-order. Wow, I know, it's so far from Christmas, I feel weird about it, but we've got to take the pre-orders now so we can get it all made in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
This year they'll be delivered much earlier, probably sometime in November, so you'll have your Christmas jumper in good time. They sold out really, really quickly last year, so go along and grab one this weekend. Once it's live, it'll be on the newsletter. So if you are subscribed to the Gerry Anderson newsletter, you'll get that news Saturday, kind of midday.
Right.
Finally, still on a merchy front, but this time about Anderson Insiders. It's our programme for people that want more access and want to see more stuff from the archive and want to get extra treats and advance news of stuff and free merch if you are on the top tier, which is the special agent tier. Special agents have now received their Anything Can Happen in the Next Half Hour t-shirts. Those were released to them before everybody else, but now they're with their new special agent owners, and now you can have one too. If you want to go around with that famous phrase emblazoned on your chest, then just go to the Gerry Anderson store and search Anything Can Happen, and it'll turn up right there.
Yeah.
I think that's quite enough for 1 week. Don't you, Richard James?
It looks very Christmassy. I'm not going to give too much away, of course, but I have seen it. It looks great. I mean, we had the fantastic Thunderbirds one last year, and I think this one might even have topped it. That's true.
No way, I can't
Definitely.
believe that. Okay,
Yeah.
well, on that bombshell, I think that brings us to the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
That was the news. Christmassy news. Should have some bells ringing over the end of that as well. Ting-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. There we are. Yeah. Nice.
So Christmassy. Thank you. Christmas in August. That's
I know.
not what we want.
Bit weird,
well,
isn't it?
actually, it's been so hot recently, I have slightly been wishing for autumn or winter. And now it's cooled down, I'm quite happy.
Yes.
So what else have we got from around the Podsteron universe,
Well,
James?
Now, we have heard from Chris Yost. Now,
Yost.
do you remember Chris Yost?
I do, because we were worried about the scone thing, weren't we?
We were. Greetings once again, my friend, says Chris. To answer your question, the words best selected to sound like Yost would be most and post.
Or
there.
toast.
Yeah. When I was listening to Pod 111, he said, and you read my email, thank you so much for including me in your top shelf podcast, the only one I listen to, I got to thinking that naming my daughter after Maya, a character in a story, may be hereditary. My mother named me after a character in a story that she liked, naming me Christopher Robin. Oh, isn't that nice? He continues, my crush on Maya led me to my writing 2 of 3 fan fictions centred around Maya. The umbrella title was the Psychon trilogy, part of the continuing voyages of Moonbase Alpha. Sadly, the last story never got finished due to the 1990s and the year 1999 looming. I felt when 1999 hit that the story would have been a moot project. How misguided I was. I look forward to Pod 112 with great eagerness. Question for Richard, says Chris. I'd never heard of Space Precinct before the podcast, but a couple of years ago I stumbled across a Gerry Anderson show that looked like an episode 1, taking place in a police cruiser with the actor famous for playing Kato in the Pink Panther movies in the back seat, involved in a chase while one of the officers was trying to cook a hot dog in a cooker on the dashboard. Would that have been the show? All the best for your continued success, Chris. Yes, absolutely, that's right. That was Burt Kwok in the back seat of the police cruiser. And that was indeed episode 1, Protect and Survive of Space Precinct. So you did accidentally stumble across an episode of Space Precinct. Well done, you.
That's the way people normally find it.
Yeah, exactly.
What was his character name? Slim, was it?
Slick.
Kwok.
Slicker Strasky.
Slick.
Yeah.
That's
yes. Right. Yeah.
Nice.
Great. I don't think I met him. I don't think I had any scenes with him, so I'm not sure I met Burt Kwok. No. That's the trouble. So many stars we had on Space Precinct, and some of them I just didn't meet because, my day off. I had a few of them.
Or you were too busy eating a tuna sandwich.
That's right. Hannah got in touch again to say, hi, how are you? I'm still well. I've been listening to the podcasts while building Airfix and Revel models in my attic, which sounds lovely. Yeah. Thanks for answering my previous question on Pod 112, says Hannah. I think a few podcasts ago, you were talking about Anderson-related dreams. We were indeed. Well, I recently had one, and I think you'll find it both very odd and amusing.
That's the best combination.
Yes. She says, I had the new Thunderbird soundtrack CD, the one that has just been released. I started playing it, but instead of hearing Barry Gray's music, it was playing wartime songs from the 1940s. What on earth was that all about, I asked myself. I can't remember what songs were playing, but I think one of them was Kiss Me Goodnight, Sergeant Major. Dreams are weird. I mean, it sounds like a song from Terrorhawks, perhaps, doesn't it? For Windsor Davis. She says, moving on, I'll be listening to the next podcast and I'm excited to find out what else lies in store in the future. Just to finish off, I know this is long overdue, but I want to say congratulations on reaching pod 100. It was very enjoyable, and I'm guessing the next big milestone will be pod 150. I look forward to it. My regards, Hannah. Yeah, 150. Yes, well, hopefully all this nonsense will be over by then and we can meet up and have a big old bash, can't we?
Do you mean the podcast itself?
Yeah, no. Yes, pod 150. Yeah.
Gosh, it's not that far away.
It really isn't, no. And one more here. This is from Simon. Simon says, I've been a long-time listener since pod 1 and I met you at Leicester. I'll try not to be too boring, etc. with this email relating to pod 113's FAB Fact. Yes, I'm the Venn diagram that crosses trains and Gerry Anderson. I've been working on the railways for 30 years, and as part of that time, I was a member of Virgin Trains, the West Coast version. I've heard every joke as well, says Simon. I remember when the Thunderbird launch was at Euston. The locos were eventually used on both West Coast and East Coast lines for many years. Yes, I have been rescued by one. This was after a light aircraft had crashed into a field and had cut through the overhead power lines. And no, it's not a plot from another Anderson story. The diesel locos were placed at strategic places across the railway awaiting the call, and they were transferred to a freight company but still have the Thunderbird's based duties across the network. Lady Penelope still had its nameplates and is often seen on standby duties at Rugby. And that's from Simon Jeffries, who also says, P.S. Benji and Nick are wrong about Terrorhawks. So there.
Thank you, Simon. I appreciate your support there from one Terrorhawks fan to another.
Great. So there we are. I'll read out a few more a little later on. But in the meantime, it's so important that if you enjoy the podcast, subscribe to it. And that way you'll get a notification every week, each time a new episode appears. And also, as Jamie said earlier, do leave us a review and a rating and let us know what you think. And hit the link, copy, paste it on your social medias and in your emails and share us with your friends so they get to hear us too.
Perfect. But most of all, don't forget to do a screenshot, post it on Twitter and Instagram with the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast, and one of you on Instagram, one of you on Twitter will win some goodies from my office. And it'll be, relevant stuff. I'm not talking about some old used Post-it notes, that kind of thing. I mean,
no, you don't want those. No.
Actual interesting Anderson stuff.
Yeah, nice.
So please do that now. Right, Richard.
Yes?
I think it's time that we welcome in a new guest to the worlds of Gerry Anderson, don't you?
Tell us about Matthew Clark.
Matthew Clark is a graphic designer for television and film. Mm-hmm. You may know his work from television shows such as, Doctor Who, Red Dwarf, and Black Mirror.
Yes, great.
He is a long-time Anderson fan. His fascination in television, I think, is mostly rooted there. And I wanted to get a different voice who does something different in contemporary film and TV onto the podcast to chat about, all things graphic design, both in the past and now. Mm-hmm. So, should we just, without further ado, go over to Matthew Clark?
Yes, please.
Here's Matthew Clark.
Hi, I'm Matthew Clark, and I am a graphic designer for film and TV.
That is a great succinct summary, and I am going to have to remember throughout this that you are Matthew Clark, not Matt. So, Podsterons, if you hear me say Matt, I mean Matthew straight away. So, Matthew, I know you from following you on Twitter, mostly, and from seeing your work across, quite a few cult TV shows. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I've been incredibly lucky in that, because you don't really get to, when you do that kind of work, you don't get to plot the jobs you go on to. It kind of just comes, it falls into place at random. So, to have done the jobs I've done, I've been really lucky to have worked across all the sci-fi shows. And
what sci-fi shows does that roster of things include? Go on, show off. Give us all the big hitters.
Well, I mean, I suppose in order I've done them, it was Doctor Who, and then Red Dwarf a couple of times, and Black Mirror a few times. So a real kind of mix of, the kind of the absurd and sublime levels of sci-fi, I suppose.
Yeah, that is an awesome mix. And so on those jobs in particular, if you had to kind of summarize the key things that you're doing on those shows, what are you doing day to day? What are you producing, and what might we have seen on those?
Yeah, so I mean, graphic design for TV and film, I think people often assume it's CGI, which it isn't. So it's stuff on set, so practical props. So it's anything that's kind of printed or a screen. So I guess newspapers, posters, things on phones, things on computer screens, labels, signage, sometimes printing things like carpet, whatever needs basically printing or designing that you can't just go out and buy. So the kind of things that kind of give a bit of depth and story to a world, really.
Yeah, all the bespoke stuff. Because I'm pretty sure I followed you because I saw your Victorian London posters. Do I mean Victorian from the Capaldi Doctor Who story with the ice?
The Frost Fair ones, that's right, yeah. God, that was
yes.
a long time ago. Yeah, so that's a really good example of it. That whole episode, everything from the pies in the pie shop need custom-made wrappers. There are various kind of old deed documents you have to kind of create from scratch. And at the same time, there's modern video screens inside the TARDIS. So it's a real mix of different styles. You have to kind of be across designing for the future, copying the past, and sometimes doing something contemporary that looks unique to anything else that's out there. So it's a real mix of disciplines.
I like that summary of designing the future and copying the past. That's a really, really great description of it, actually. And these are probably things that people they're not like super consciously aware of as they're watching it. And that's part of the magic, I guess, is you're designing stuff that fits completely, makes it all visual sense, and nothing kind of sticks out and jars as, oh, that looks a bit modern, or that looks out of place somehow.
I think sometimes that's the worst thing. If you do a contemporary show, a lot of the times you're designing things to be invisible, or you've got to cover up a shop that already exists. So when we did Bodyguard a few years ago, a lot of my work was just taking high streets and covering them in signs to make them something else. So all fake brands, but then fake brands didn't jump out as being really fake. So there's an element of kind of learning the precise level of not real, but not obviously not real. But so when you do a sci-fi show, it's great because you can really go all out and make it as mad as you want. So yeah, it's some amount of self-control is required for some of those jobs.
Yeah. I guess you're a lot less restricted in the TARDIS than you are in sort of Victoriana. Yeah,
and to be fair, even if you do a period one, you get it's a bit heightened, really, because, I mean, I guess famously Doctor Who is relatively low budget. It's better now than I think it was, but it's still not sort of extravaganza. So the person I worked for on Doctor Who, Michael Pickwood, who sadly passed on, he was great at his family are very much rooted in the oldie England. So his brother, I think, is the Royal Book Restorer. Michael himself studies civil engineering. You mentioned the Frost Fair episode. That episode takes place in the Thames, underneath a giant bridge. And that bridge was a real bridge that existed over the Thames, but was demolished before cameras were invented. So no one actually knew what it looked like photographically. But Michael had the original construction plans in a book from 1800, whatever. It's this huge, voluminous. So he just knew everything about design from the past. So he would teach you the kind of 5 things you need to include to kind of get the feeling right, but for sort of 70 pence or whatever. It was brilliant. Like, we could do anything for no money because he knew the shortcuts to make things feel completely real. But when we did spaceships, obviously we could then do whatever we liked. But we were able to do the period things really well because he had like this absurd knowledge. And there's an episode we did where the Doctor rolls into a castle on a tank, and Michael knew the width of the tank. He knew which tank would fit through castle doors because he knew castle doors had to be X wide to fit a horse and cart. And a horse and cart was so wide, the tank would be 2 carts width to fit on the UK. He just knew the sequence of knowledge.
Amazing.
Just a fantastic man to work for.
Wow. I mean, that's the great skill of people like that who are able to kind of pull together a department to get a consistent look. And yeah, we'll definitely touch on that in the kind of the looks of the Anderson stuff. So there are definitely tweets I've seen from you in the past that reference Anderson stuff, which is kind of why I thought, oh, Matthew would be great for this.
Yes.
So I think we are a not dissimilar age. I'm not going to put a number on it just in case.
We've both got identical looking photos of us when we're 8 with the kind of the striped shirts and ties and stuff. So
It must be the same era. It must be the same era. So,
born in 84, so...
There you go. Let's say I'm 85. So I'm guessing then that does your Anderson exposure start in the early 90s with the BBC rerun, or is it a different time to that?
I mean, my parents were quite big into it when it first came out, and I found out later my uncles had all the toys, but I had no exposure to it until it was on TV when it was relaunched, which I think started with Thunderbirds as opposed to kind of going in the order of like Stingray, Thunderbirds. My parents just said, you might like this, and it just completely broke my head, I think. So growing up as a kid before that, I'd watched kind of Thomas the Tank Engine, whatever, and my parents were aware that I was into the models more than I was the narrative of the show or whatever. So I think they said, he'll like this. There's model airplanes blowing up and stuff. It just fried my head. I just couldn't believe the kind of things you were seeing, the kind of the colours of the ships, the kind of the vividness of everything kind of blowing up, the real physicality of all the kind of... So I think they started with the first episode. So, fire flash landing on the elevator cars, the kind of real sense of everything having suspension and physics and clouds of smoke coming up and the sound effects, like all those kind of jet engines and the rockets kind of firing. It's kind of a dangerous thing to give a kid in a way because it's just sensory overload, isn't it? So,
look what's happened now. Yeah, exactly. But we're talking about these already in kind of quite adult terms. Mm-hmm. Like the physics of it, that kind of thing, and the sound effects. They're things that you obviously from your position now, you know very well what those are and how they work and why they give a certain look and feel. But as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, you don't know those things. Yeah. So especially compared to whatever else would have been on at the time. I mean, like Captain Planet 2D cartoon, Biker Mice from Mars. Totally stood out against all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of, as a kid, I didn't realise. It actually took me a long time before I worked out that Thunderbird 2 couldn't actually fly based on its shape. To me, that seemed perfectly logical, and that all made sense. But yeah, it was the noise and the colour, really. It was just because obviously each ship has its own individual colour. And, I grew up with kind of like Lego and Brio and all these kind of toys that you can kind of like clunk together. And so you sort of see this thing of Thunderbird 2 in the hangar with all the pods that go inside the ship and the things that go inside the pod, and everything has this kind of sort of stacking kind of sensibility to it where machine attaches to machine that does other thing. And when you watch it now as an adult, you realise just how much screen time is given to sequences of machines being turned on and kind of connecting. So yeah, as someone as a kid who was into like the machines and building things and things falling over, it was really amazing.
Yeah. And in amongst all that kind of physical fascination, and I can totally see the kids who love Lego and models and real stuff will connect more with it, whether they understand how it's made or not. What about the puppets to you? Was there any sense of that being weird or different or a challenge to get into?
I think so. I think I'm lucky to be at the age where, you just accept whatever you're given, really, which is lovely. And I do still remember it was that thing where at that point a lot of parodies kind of came off the back of that, kind of in sketch shows, and kind of they took the mick out of the puppets and saying, they look really awful or whatever. Not awful, but they kind of... It's a bit like how Doctor Who has this kind of reputation for looking a bit crap, or it did in the 60s or whatever. And almost like that's a deliberately followed path, as opposed to being the best they could do with technology they have. And not really... People don't really appreciate the charm they have. Because they're sculpted by the same people who've made... Or the same team who've made the models, and they're wearing the kind of costumes designed by Sylvia, I suppose. It's consistent within the visual world. Like, you don't really... As a kid, yes, you can see the wires, I suppose, but the design is so kind of well thought out across the entire show. It doesn't really stick out to you as being odd, really. And they were very charismatic. I mean, people had their favourite pilot character. I think they wouldn't have that if they weren't believable in some degree. So obviously I like Virgil because he had the best ship, obviously.
Totally with you there.
And then obviously they were voiced amazingly well. I mean, you always... Who voiced Scott?
Shane Rimmer.
Because you always, whenever I'm watching a film, I'm like Scott Tracy to my girlfriend. He's in my band. A really unmistakable voice. So there's so much charisma, both kind of visually and audibly, behind those characters. I think it was completely, the fact that puppets were neither here nor there, really.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people just say it is down to the voices and the performances in particular it takes itself really quite seriously. You compare it to any other kind of puppet shows in the decade prior to that, they all had kind of tweeness, a syrupiness to them that lent them a naffness. Everything was taken so seriously within this world. Like you say, it all kind of fitted together visually and every other way.
I always felt Captain Scarlet was maybe a bit too close to being real and therefore felt less charming, maybe? I'm not sure. It's hard to really kind of articulate how I felt about it as a kid, because Captain Scarlet would have come through a few years later, because I think they kind of drip-fed re-releases.
Yeah, I think 93 Scarlet started showing on BBC Two, I think.
Well, the time was much longer when you were that age.
Oh, yeah, of course. It felt like a decade between these shows, and it's actually only a month. But the Thunderbirds got all of them going again on that BBC Two slot that ran through the mid-90s, that kind of early evening slot. So.
BBC Two at 6 p.m. was just the magic time for years. It was brilliant. It was, Thunderbirds on a Friday, I think, and then as I got older, you'd had like Star Trek on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. and Randall Hopkirk on a Thursday, and The Simpsons on a Monday. Just like really amazing television.
Man from U.N.C.L.E., that was on there as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of content sort of batching is sorely missed, I think, on BBC Two, because kids aren't getting that, that cult access all in one place. Anyway, that's another thing entirely. Because you brought Scarlet up and the change of proportion and that kind of thing, there are two camps, basically, of puppet fans, Anderson puppet fans. Those who look at Thunderbirds and see that as the pinnacle. That was the best possible combination of everything, and that included the caricatured heads and the larger eyes, and them being more puppety, in inverted commas. And then there are those who say, well, no, the transition to that human proportioned look in Captain Scarlet, that is the pinnacle of puppetry, because it looked so real. Personally, I think you lose something in that transition. If it is puppetry, make them puppets. Don't try and make them human. It's a bit like kind of Uncanny Valley almost for CG when it becomes almost human. Mm-hmm. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think I'm probably the same. The thing about Scarlet was it was a lot more mature in every sense. So the design of the machines was more mature, and the sets were architecturally more serious, I suppose. So I guess within its own world, it's a bit more consistent. But for me, it's slightly less fun, I suppose. And I guess now you look at it with a sense of what's kind of period or charming, whatever. So personally, I prefer seeing more of the kind of the wires and the sense of it being very obviously puppets back then. And I think they kind of exaggerated a lot of the whole show is a bit more heightened to kind of work with that kind of exaggerated look, isn't it? So the music scores are a little bit more kind of like sort of fun and brassy, and the costumes are kind of quite loud. So yeah, there's a lot more kind of character in those kind of simpler puppets, I suppose. Yeah.
And I think also that Captain Scarlet was so dark and so serious, it lacked the balance of... Because, Thunderbirds had a lot of dramatic, really serious stuff going on, but there was a balance with a bit of levity in there, which I think maybe makes for a better overall picture.
Yeah, I think I sort of have vague memories of kind of the alligator one, where there's kind of like, especially a scene where someone's sort of eaten by an alligator, it's a horrible scream, and then it cuts the kind of puppet kind of floating in the water quite limply, and so that's kind of offset the kind of the gruesome implications of that somewhat. Whereas Scarlet was casual with death, wasn't it? There's the UN bombing in one of the episodes where everyone's dead. That's the end of that.
Yeah. No, there was no messing. And Captain Black killed some bank robbers in one of them, where there was a town that had been evacuated, and some bank robbers pretended to be Podsterons. And that's Captain Black said, "You're the worst of humanity." Boom. It's really dark, and there's no Penelope and Parker to bring a kind of lighter note to it. But I'm not sure they would have fitted into Captain Scarlet anyway. What about the puppet shows beyond Thunderbirds and Scarlet, Matthew? Did you get into anything kind of Stingray, Marvel XL5? Maybe not. I didn't think that crossed onto the BBC.
No, it didn't. I love Stingray. And when did that come after Captain Scarlet? Was that kind of like...
it was pre-Thunderbirds. So it was Fireball, Stingray, Thunderbirds, Scarlet.
Sorry, in terms of the re-releases.
Sorry. Yes, I think it would have been just after... I'm pretty sure it went the BBC runs went Thunderbird, Scarlet, Stingray, Joe 90, I think.
Well, of course, Joe 90. I kind of missed a lot of Joe 90. I'm not really sure why. But yeah, Stingray, I love Stingray. It was, for me, probably more the theme tune was ridiculous. Like just being hit in the face with 1,000 drums, just amazing. And that will kind of get you to watch anything like that level of action. And it was interesting seeing the kind of because I think my parents said to me, "Oh, Stingray is much earlier than Thunderbird, so it's not quite as accomplished." Because they were quite aware of the Scarlet Heads being more. So I suppose when they watched them originally, there was more hype around the idea that Scarlet was more mature, more technically advanced show. So they kind of relayed this to me as well. So I think I was quite aware of the relatively kind of wonkiness of the Stingray, but shots like when the Stingray comes out of the water and Terrorfish follows it, there's a very clear kind of sense of objects on strings. Whereas by Thunderbirds, they've really worked out the kind of the flying motions of the ships. But I mean, yeah, again, I love Stingray for all the same reasons. It was kind of the ships themselves, Marineville kind of folding on itself, that kind of very kind of kinetic sense of machines and objects. But I couldn't really tell you much about the plots. None of the episodes really stuck out to me at that point. I think it was all. I remember the weird love triangle with Troy and
Atlanta and Marina.
That's it.
Yeah, I always found that a bit weird and uncomfortable. I've got a little bit of an allergy actually about kind of relationship stuff in the puppet shows. It feels like a bit of an odd distraction, and that being so central. I mean, he was just a love rat basically, but he was the hero, so it was and that makes it feel older, as in more retro than the others possibly.
Is a different time is the phrase they like to use in these situations.
A different time. Those three, Stingray, Thunderbird, Scarlet, probably are the most consistent in their look and their style and use of kind of typography and stuff. I'm just interested from your kind of design perspective, your production perspective, what you think the key elements that make those colour supermarination shows look the way they do and hang together the way they do.
I mean, I think it probably is the colour is probably the key thing in those shows. I guess colour TV was very. I think Thunderbirds wasn't broadcast in colour, was it, to start with? It was shot in colour, but wasn't seen in colour.
Yeah, not until late 60s or early 70s, I think.
So I don't know if they were painted in such a way to look disparate in black and white, and then when they were seen in colour, they were much more vivid because of it. But yeah, I think I think colour is the show's kind of main hook. Thunderbirds was great in that it kind of gave you this really solid sense of block colour for each ship, and therefore that colour was kind of what was happening in that mission. If the Thunderbird 2 mission, it's a green thing, the green ship comes out. Thunderbird 4 is yellow, and you kind of going to associate it being underwater all the time. And obviously Captain Scarlet had that whole thing where each operative was a different colour. It's a really lovely kind of cheesy thing. They're called Spectrum, and they all have a separate colour. But it was actually much more mature in the colours, and I think, and it was obviously silver was very interested in fashion, and that seemed to carry across in the shows strongly. But Scarlet had the most kind of mature, maybe contemporary fashion, and you look at kind of how cool the Angels flight suits were, and I remember their launch bay having kind of loads of yellowy orange acrylic and that sort of thing, just really strong shades of the period. And you could easily kind of take screenshots of those kind of sets and whack them in an architectural magazine, and they wouldn't look out of place with like the most high concept architecture of the point of that era. Just really beautiful use of colour. And one of the things about sci-fi today is sci-fi tries really hard to be very muted and desaturated and kind of shades of grey. And the Anderson stuff is just sort of slamming kind of these really vivid shades at you all the time. It's just wonderful stuff. It's so kind of evocative and it's kind of visually very exciting to watch.
Yeah. I mean, does science fiction have to be devoid of colour now to work?
No, it's a real shame that it's the thing. And I've often said, like, I'd love to see a modern day Thunderbirds kind of shot with the old aesthetic where you have all these kind of really strong colours. I think sci-fi went through this. I use Star Trek as kind of analogy this all the time, where sci-fi spent so long being kind of ridiculed, I think, for being nerdy, not very cool. And you have the Avengers films, which obviously have done huge money, but they kind of embrace this kind of very desaturated, gritty aesthetic, almost, I think, as a defence against being labelled as being nerdy. So it's kind of, it tries really hard to be kind of cool in your face and a bit edgy, to not be made fun of. And I think a lot of shows have kind of followed suit with that, and they are a bit afraid to be as vivid. The original Star Trek series, again, the colours in that are very like the Anderson shows, where it's kind of pastels and kind of bright oranges, and the command uniform is gold, and all the props are kind of blue with ice cubes glued in them, but really beautiful colours. And but now you wouldn't dare do that because it's not realistic, or it kind of lacks, it would seem silly. And when they did Enterprise in the mid-2000s, which obviously was a prequel to the original Star Trek, it's extremely grey. And, the designers had to do it in a way, because you couldn't just do a show like that now without people kind of questioning it. And one of the perks of doing Red Dwarf is, because it's a period show almost, in that it hasn't really left the 80s visually, we got to chuck in loads of really bright incandescent colours again. Whereas if you're doing a modern sci-fi, it's just, here's 5 different colours of grey, go mad with them, that's it. So I'd love to see a return to that kind of colour. And typography as well. So the Thunderbird, all the models in those shows were done with Letraset. So before computer printing or any of the normal printing methods we have now, you would go to the shops and you'd buy sheets of rub-on lettering in various fonts and colours, which I think you and I probably had those as toys in a way. You had the little transfers of Ghostbusters and stuff, rub into books. But before then, a lot of kind of magazine layouts are done with Letraset, where you just kind of cut each letter out, line it up, rub it on. So the ships are done with kind of off-the-shelf, kind of very big, heavy, bold, design-led fonts. So Thunderbird 2 has this massive 2 on the side in Futura Bold, which was Stanley Kubrick's favourite font. So it's just a really strong visual impact. Whereas now you look at spaceships and films, they don't have that kind of really lovely kind of slammed-on, like 2, 3, and the yellow stripes. They're all kind of quite realistic, military-led sort of markings in a way. And I think we reached a point now where we're so post-realism now, in terms of, I think we know how things are going to look. Things that tend to look very muted, things tend to be very small and riveted and multi-layered sheets. It'd be fun to do a sci-fi that doesn't have to kind of pretend to be real, and just kind of let it have all these kind of colours and shapes. And yeah, I'd love to return back to that. And Doctor Who was quite good for that as well. Sometimes Michael Pickford would say, "Oh, just paint this kind of bright yellow," which people would question. But actually, when you watch the episode, it kind of works, because it's not trying to be too serious. And if you did a grey spaceship every episode, you'd just have endless grey spaceships. So no, a return to colour would be lovely.
Yeah, that grey has become a sort of the Magnolia of sci-fi, hasn't it? Yeah, everyone's walls are Magnolia, everyone's ships are grey. It's weird because, I suppose even modern consumer vehicles, if we look at something like the Cybertruck, even that is heading towards, one colour fits all, and it's just the bare metal, that's it. So maybe we are headed inexorably towards that, unless somebody like designers kind of make a drive towards showing us a more colourful and comfortable future rather than all this stark stuff.
Yeah, there's obviously an argument for realism, for ergonomics and kind of ease of use, but someone sent me a picture of the last SpaceX ship, which was just an array of touch panels, and so, you must love that. I thought, well, not really. And obviously, the old Apollo ships had a switch for every function because there wasn't anything multifunctional, and it makes sense to condense things down. I suppose I'd have to learn a bank of 500 switches, but it's a bit sort of, okay. It's just a bit of a shame, really. And I think the last thing to be really kind of, I think if you look at Star Trek Next Generation, which had those really lovely graphic-heavy backlit panels, which we try to rationalise how they work, make no sense really, but they imply a sense of function, and they're very kind of like lovely swoops and curves and kind of pastel shades. And the show is now old enough that you can look at it and not think, oh, it's not realistic, but you appreciate it because of the visual of the time. And I feel something's a bit, and there's someone who designs screens now, I feel like we can never go and be that bold. We can never chuck in those huge colour slabs and just rework with the really kind of raw forms of things. Because Thunderbird ships are great. Thunderbird 3 is just a big, long red tube. But it's brilliant. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's really great design-wise. So, yeah, I'm sad that we haven't got a chance to work with that sort of thing, I think. Yeah.
You never know, maybe at some point, something in real life will push us back towards more colourful stuff, and it'll bleed through.
Claw back to the more fun stuff.
Well, that almost became a chat about the DeLorean there, and Matthew's fascination with it, and his unfinished DeLorean project, plural.
Great.
But clearly lots of love for Anderson stuff there. heavily leaning, as many do, into Thunderbirds. And next week, we're going to find out about how Matthew went from being a kid sitting in front of the telly loving these shows to working in film and TV, and also how much of an influence Anderson art direction and graphic design has on sci-fi today. And I think you'll be surprised by his answer.
Great.
So there you go.
Not
Matthew
at all.
Clark. Yes, he just hung up on me at that point.
That is a surprise, yeah.
No, Matthew Clark, part 2, next week on Pod 116.
Great. Look forward to that. Lovely. Got some more emails here that people have been sending in to, to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. For example, Pen Quiller got in touch to say, "Hi, Jamie, Richard and Chris. I have a fab fact that you might not be aware of." You ready for this?
Love those. Yes,
I'm
please.
slightly behind, with my podcasts. That's not the fab fact. So I've only just finished listening to Pod 111 with Chris Dale's Randomiser feature on the Stingray episode Plant of Doom. Now, in the episode, Marina visits her father, Aphany. I think that's what he said. Yeah?
Yes.
Who, like her, is unable to speak. Did you know, says Pen Quiller, that Aphany is the Greek for no voice? Phone is Greek for voice, for example, telephone and gramophone, while the A in front of a word indicates a negative, e.g. assonance and aphany. This would have gone straight over my head when I watched Stingray as a child back in the 60s, but now I can appreciate the wordplay. Keep up the good work, FAB Pen Quiller. It's good, isn't it?
That is great fab facting.
Yeah, isn't that great?
However, there's another can of worms that's been opened here.
Uh-oh.
Now, Podsterons, I'm not entirely sure on this, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that Titan, in one of the mini albums, stole the ability to speak from Marina's people.
Ah.
So if that's the case,
yes,
and there's an episode called Marina Speaks, on the mini albums.
Yes.
If that's the case, was he just unfortunately called Aphany, even though they could still speak?
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, is that the case? I may have completely, fabricated this whole thing, but I'm sure that's the case. Someone with top knowledge of Stingray, which may well be Chris Dale, please let me know your thoughts on that aphonic can of worms.
Great. Now, Eric has been in touch as well and sent us a voice file, which we always love to hear, of course. But he starts by saying, you boys have got me again. This is the trouble with listening to all the old pods. You miss out on some wonderful deals and then get the urge to jump on the existing ones before they vanish too. I've included another voice clip explaining the latest merchy merch trap I fell into. It was a domino effect. So let's have a listen to this.
Hello, Jamie, Richard, and Chris. It's your friend Eric from the United States. I've come up with something called the Gerry Anderson Podcast Challenge, which is where I try to go through the entire back catalog of episodes, try not to go bankrupt, and become very sad at all the deals that I've missed, especially that huge one from Pod 64. That would have been great. Anyway, I was listening to Pod 65, where you played a 15-minute preview of the Space 1999 Big Finish production, which was fantastic, by the way. And it sent me over to the GA store to start picking up that, and then there was a bonus episode, so I got that, and then there was Shane Rimmer's audiobook, so I got that. Long story short, the next thing I know, I'm popping over to the Patreon to become an Anderson Insider, and I figure if we're going to do this right, special agent all the way. I might need that Spectrum wallet sooner than I think. By the way, I have yet to see a single episode of Space 1999 yet. Everything I know is purely from the Randomiser, so this should be interesting. Thank you once again for everything you guys do. FAB, Forever Anderson Bold.
Oh, Eric, sorry about that. I mean, congratulations. Yes. That is quite a retail cascade, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Yeah, that's great. But isn't that interesting that he bought the Big Finish Space 1999 box set without having seen the original series? He's never seen the original show.
Yeah,
I
wonder how many there are have done that.
That's right. So he's coming to that series fresh from a very different perspective to perhaps how most people have come to it. It's nice, isn't it? I like that. And what will you think? Eric, let us know when you listen to it, and then perhaps if you watch some Space 1999, let us know what you think of the TV version.
Please do that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's such an unusual way to do it that way.
That's right. Yeah, that's great. Now, you'll like this one, Jamie. Bonadar, Jamie, Richard and Chris. I'm thoroughly enjoying the podcast, and when I heard your request for music, I knew I had to get in touch. I'm a budding musician and composer, starting work on my GCSEs in September. I've been inspired by the work of Barry Gray and the wider works of Gerry Anderson after being introduced to them by my dad when I was younger. I recently entered an arrangement of the themes to the Zero X and Fireflash to my school's monthly music competition, and I was placed first.
Congratulations.
I arranged all the parts as well as playing them and editing them together to create the finished piece. It was featured on my school's website as an example of some of the work done by pupils during lockdown. The podcast has been one of the things that has got me through my Monday morning's work during the pandemic, and I enjoy catching up with missed Randomiser episodes through the spin-off. I'm very pleased with my collection of various merchandise from the store, and I can't get enough of Space Precinct. Keep up the good work. And that's from Thomas Hayne, who describes himself as a nerd and junior Podsteron.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Thomas.
Yeah, now he did actually send us a link where we could listen to that music. It's quite a lengthy one, so I'm not going to read it out here. But I wonder if there's anywhere we could put that on the Facebook group or something.
I think we should post that link on the Facebook group.
Yeah, let's do that. But how nice, isn't it, that even he self-confessed as a junior Podsteron has a love for Barry Gray's music and is inspired by it. That's fantastic, isn't it?
It's timeless, stylish and brilliant, and I'm glad it's influencing even junior Podsterons.
Yeah. And finally, hi guys, I've recently discovered your podcast through the interviews you did with Mr. Brian Cox and Sir Robin of Ince. Great stuff, although now I've got a lot of catching up to do, you certainly do. One of the recent ones I heard, a listener was requesting a Captain Scarlet wallet, but these are already available. I've still got mine from when I was about 9 years old. I'm now 60.
I'm not sure what that exact version is still available now, but if it is, amazing.
I know. This is Ian Plowman, who then goes on to say, and a little trivia I may have spotted for you. I was given one of these for Christmas during the 60s, and I've still got it in the loft. And he posted a picture in his email for us. He says it's a Tiger Joe battery-operated remote-controlled tank, and I think the main body of the tank was used as the basis of the road layer machine in the Thunderbirds episode End of the Road. Keep up the excellent work. Regards, Ian Plowman. Sent, he says, from my BBC Micro Model B32K. So that's sweet, isn't it? So yeah, and he posted that picture to us of a remote-controlled tank, and also the corresponding picture from the Thunderbirds episode End of the Road, of the road layer machine. And yes, you can see it there, can't you? Quite clearly, I think, that it's been incorporated into the machine.
Well, I'll tell you what, this has just reminded me that in due course over on Anderson Insiders, I will post a video from David Tremont's workshop where he goes through a load of old model kits that he's collected over the years that ended up being used and rehashed and built to create various models across the Anderson series. So it regularly happened. There are lots of toys as well, various toy cars. And in fact, David told me that there's a Ford Thunderbird model kit that was often used to create the look of futuristic cars.
Right.
So remember that we had that thing about the Thunderbird car ages ago?
Yes, that's right.
Funnily enough, that did end up in Thunderbirds in model kit form.
Of course.
It's all very circular, isn't it?
Yeah, great.
Oh, and Richard, I just thought, you know what our listeners will have been doing over the weekend, don't you? Well, the ones in the UK anyway.
Apart from that, you mean?
Yeah, apart from that, they will have been watching all of the Gerry Anderson collection on BritBox.
Of course they would, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
how
if
exciting.
you've been watching, let us know. It's been your first, for many of you, it'll be your first chance to have seen the 3 anniversary episodes that were created in 2015 for the 50th anniversary. Did you enjoy them? Let us know what you think. Is it nice just to be seeing it there all in one place? I think it's Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, UFO and Space 1999, but I'm told there may be more coming. I think, is that exclusive? I think it might have been. Anyway, can't guarantee it, but I believe that's the line of thinking. So let us know if you've been enjoying it. I want to know.
I want to know, is there anything there that you're watching for the first time? Stuff that you've been hearing us talk about on the podcast that you've never actually seen, and now is your opportunity. And if you've been catching up and watching it for the first time, let us know. That's interesting, isn't it?
Please do.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, that's a very, very neat segue, because there's an element of this podcast which allows people to watch things for the very first time because they hear it spoken about for the very first time on this podcast. And that part of this podcast that allows them to do that is Chris Dale's amazing randomiser.
Of course it is. Yes, I wondered where you were
He's finished
going
changing
with
that tyre.
Oh,
so
good.
I think, should we get him in and he can do his thing?
Yeah, come on then, Chris.
Off you go, Chris.
I can't stand the heat. so hot.
Oh, you can say that again. Makes us wonder why any of us agreed to sign on board the Sun Probe. Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's instalment of It's Too Darn Pigging Hot.
Some of my best friends are pigs.
No, not that Sun Probe. Things aren't that desperate. Not yet, anyway. Oh, but I can't deal with this heat today.
Temperatures up around the 120s again.
Gentlemen, I propose that we abandon this ill-advised mission to the sun, and instead we set course for that planet full of buxom young ladies who run around in red skin-tight spandex and whip their menfolk when they've been naughty. Does that sound like a plan to you, boys?
Of course. Yes, sir.
Right. And that ties in rather neatly with this week's Randomiser selection. It's Space 1999, Devil's Planet. So, welcome back everybody to Space 1999 Season 2, everybody's favourite.
The status report, 2,306 days after leaving Earth orbit.
With Devil's Planet, which is an interesting episode to talk about, I think, for several reasons, kicking off with this.
Commander John Koenig has lifted off in Eagle 1 on a reconnaissance mission. With him is Blake Main of the Medical Rescue Team.
That's it. Koenig and Blake Main have set off from Alpha to investigate this
vegetation.
Planet and moon they've discovered. And what's interesting is that that audio from Barbara Bain there giving the Alpha log entry. It's the only time you're going to get any new material of her this episode. As previously discussed in one of the FAB Facts segments, this was one of the episodes that was shot side by side with another episode, Dorzak. Normally they would split the cast. Landau would lead the cast in one episode, Bain would lead the cast in another, and the rest of the cast would be split between the two. But in this episode, it is basically just Koenig and one or two others, mostly newbies and first appearances that we'll see in a bit. Anyway, it's all looking very promising for Koenig and his faithful chum.
I'm picking up a life form signal.
I mean, he's even wearing a red coat. It's not quite a red shirt, but we know he's going to...
north of what seems to be the city.
We know he's going to have a long and fruitful career on this show. Especially with this being 2 episodes away from the end of the series. A fairly unconvincing alien city model there, but I suppose, given what we find out later, it is meant to look fairly disused. Lots of trees about the place. The first of some lovely effects work in this episode. Eagles in forests, that always looks nice. Especially when they crash and go...
Life form signals cut out.
Oh. There was a person here and now there is no persons.
What have we got here?
It looks like a sort of portaloo in the middle of the woods. Giving it a thorough examination, we're walking around every side of this thing. Mr. Deadmeat even smiled at us, like, wow, a big box. And then we see the bodies. Rather a lot of bodies, in fact. All wearing grey jumpsuity things. And we're about to head over to Alpha to get their reaction to all this. Now keep in mind this is a series, potentially this is another Operation Exodus situation. We could be about to abandon Alpha, come and live on this new planet. So who have we left in charge?
Body perfectly preserved. Time of death indeterminate. Cause of death? That's a good question.
Any theories, Blake?
Bill Fraser has been left in charge of Alpha, which I kind of like because I like the character and I like the actor John Hugg. And we've seen a couple of hints in the second series that he was maybe part of the command structure of Alpha, so it's nice to get some indication finally that he can take over if everyone else is busy, but I don't know where the rest of them are in this episode. A nice zoom in on one of the dead men. Blake opens the eye and, well, everyone reacts as if it's something very nasty.
Whatever it was, it hit the central nervous system. Must have caused tremendous pressure to explode those blood vessels. A form of nerve gas. A lethal pathogen that invaded their bodies. Or bacteria released in the atmosphere.
Or they stubbed their toe, I don't know. Oh, who's this beaming into the interesting box in the middle of the woods? It's an Elvis Presley impersonator. who seems very pleased to see them. But up on Alpha, no one's too keen on this.
No. Don't touch him. Don't go near him. He could be contagious. Get out. Get off that planet.
Yeah, everyone on the planet is dead, and now Mr. Elvis Presley impersonator is really making the most of his death as he goes down. That's it. He's at it. Oh no. I do love this. Featuring Tony Anholt. Yeah, it's a blink and you'll miss him. Must have been in his contract. Anyway.
The city too. Everybody on that planet is dead.
Oh, that's perfect for you guys to move in then.
The nerve-killing pathogen. Our systems must have a built-in immunity.
Or it would just take longer to affect you guys.
Satellite at Mother Planet has same atmosphere, vegetation.
Let's make a pass over that moon and see what else we can pick up.
We'll track you, Eagle 1. Over and out.
And that was the introduction of Alib, played by Alib Parsons, because at this point they're just completely given up on interesting names for the new characters. She is the second replacement for Sandra. That was her introduction, incredibly enough, to the series. And also up on Alpha for this week, giving medical advice, we have Sam Dastor as Dr. Ed Spencer giving...
Main drive!
It's only his second appearance on the show, so it is a... Alpha does look particularly sorry state.
Secondary drive.
Emergency.
It's just Fraser and Spencer and Alib. Where is everyone else?
It's not functioning.
Anyway, no time to worry about that. We have got...
Eagle 1 to Moonbase Alpha. We're out of control. Connect to Moonbase Alpha.
And the fact that none of the named regulars are really here...
Alpha Eagle 1.
When Koenig calls his distress call in,
I will do exactly
you're having to rely on the extras to look concerned.
to me on Eagle 4.
And for the new actors, Parsons and Dastor, to actually know what's going on. It's
Functioning.
You know, I like that we've got an episode giving them a bit more, well, not prominence as such, but I kind of like the idea that all this has happened maybe during the night shift or something. But it does look a bit silly that, given what we see later in the episode, we don't get any reaction from Helena, Maya, Tony, Alan to what's going on here.
Vertical thrusters, maximum drive.
Anyway, it looks like Koenig and Mr. Live Long and Prosper is going to... Oh, they were nearly going to crash into the woods. Think we can pull out of it? No. Oh, I love this crash. This is an awesome crash. It's straight through the woods. All the bits of wood is flying all over the place. Gorgeous stuff. And they both get thrown about quite a bit as well.
Come on, let's get out of here. This thing's liable to blow.
Don't quite match up with the live action footage though, as Koenig and Mr. Oh, he's fallen over now. Mr. Red-shirted Doomed to Die. Oh, we can hear whips. Yeah, they're back on the forest set now. Effectively stranded. The Eagles crashed. They didn't manage to get much equipment out. And there's a man on the run. Also in a drab grey uniform, like the dead bodies on the planet were wearing, being chased by 3 ladies in leotards carrying whips. Red leotards, in fact. And I like how they've tried to make this forest set seem bigger than it is by just putting a lot of trees and foliage in front of the camera so you can't really see what you're looking at. Anyway, our runaway nearly made it to the central column, but the ladies with the whips aren't having any of that. And Blake Main, here he comes. And there he goes. Dead. Frazzled. All that's left is his uniform. And Koenig barely has time to react to that before he gets whipped around the throat and conked on the head by one of the naughty ladies. Now this is an episode that I used to, whenever it came up on my rewatch of a show, if I was marathon rewatching the show and I saw this one coming up, I'd think, oh dear. It's an episode that I never actually look forward to seeing, and then when it comes up, I always enjoy it far more than I was expecting to. I'm not sure what it is.
Be he incarcerated here on the penal planet of Entra,
But this might have something to do with
on the
it.
mother planet of Elna, is to destroy one of the basic principles for which civilizations of all galaxies have fought.
Roy Marsden as one of the prisoners on the
Damn the prisoner.
the Devil's Moon. This is Crail
All life.
making an appeal on behalf of another prisoner to the
I am touched by your eloquence, Grail.
the tyrannical prison warder Elysia,
Who is mistress of Entra, embrace what's right.
played by Hildegard Neal. wife of Mr. Brian Blessed, in fact.
And to each and every prisoner who has ever been sentenced to enter from our mother planet.
And these are extras playing the group of prisoners, including the one that Crail is defending. They are, at least half of them, I would say, have previously appeared on Moonbase Alpha as extras.
So long as I am the ruling force, I will not tolerate any abuse of the freedom of speech. Not by anyone.
Yes, married to Brian Blessed, and I was reading Brian's autobiography not too long ago, and he did say something I thought was quite sweet. It was amazing she hasn't yet left me or just abandoned me in the woods, which I thought was quite sweet.
The hunt for him.
Inhuman.
Inhuman. A chance for freedom to return to Elna?
1 out of 100 survived the hunt.
Yeah, Marsden in this is just, something very special. And what's even,
One of them the
I was going to say stranger, but I think sadder, is that this is actually Roy Marsden's second appearance on the show. And he was previously seen in that most beloved and classic of Space 1999 episodes, The Rules of Luton. He was one of the 3 monsters shambling around in a quarry. And if you didn't know that before, you do now, and isn't that just so sad?
Is he?
That's borderline like, I don't know, if someone told me that Patrick Stewart was in one of those costumes, it's just, no, you don't put Roy Marsden in a monster costume and send him out into a quarry to stumble around.
Subject's name John Koenig, commander of Moonbase Alpha. Moonbase Alpha was a satellite of a planet called Earth.
Koenig's mind is being read by the entrant interrogator, and this is another actress I like in this show, and I believe...
It's very force-filled. He sent a message. And his people will be served.
I believe this is actually her last screen acting role.
Well, they can have him.
She'd been quite busy through the 60s and early 70s.
He has been to Elna. He knows that everybody there is dead, that everybody sent there dies.
Oh, well, we'll give him a handsome funeral.
So, Koenig is not long for this world, by the sounds of it.
We're approaching the quadrant of the commander's last message.
Try to pick up Eagle 1 on your sensor.
Oh, well, that was a great scene. Yeah, this is one of those episodes, as you'd get in the original Star Trek sometimes, where most of the action takes place on the planet, and every so often you get like a brief moment of a couple of the regulars looking for the missing crewmates.
1 year off for good behaviour.
But Roy Marsden has managed to accomplish something today. He's got one of his fellow inmates released, by the look of it.
There is justice when one earns it.
And this guy is definitely an Alphan, a former Alphan. Oh, he's in the crowd scene at the end of the Seance Spectre, that's right, because he looks almost exactly like one of the guest characters in that episode. Anyway.
Bye, Baron.
Baron, he's being beamed back.
When ready, you may activate.
To the phone box in the forest on Elna. There's a phone box in the room here on Entra. And he's heading home after serving his prison sentence. Must be a very great day for him. This is what everybody on Entra is looking forward to. There he is, home and safe. Nobody's come to meet him. I wonder where everybody is. This is another classic death. Oh, I've got tummy ache. Oh, it hurts. And down.
May I speak, Elysium?
And it looks like Koenig and Main moved the body of the previous dead guy who died right in front of them. He falls on the same exact spot.
We have released many prisoners. Not only have we never heard from them again, but Elna has stopped beaming up any new prisoners.
Everyone listens to the weekly reports beamed here. They have news from their home, their families. What is there to wonder about?
Hearing news is not seeing news.
You prisoners are political troublemakers.
We cause no more trouble. You've beaten us down, siphoned the militancy out of us.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is about this episode that I find actually does work, despite its, shall we say, tendencies. I do think it's in the guest cast here, of Marsden and Neil.
Very few of us have realised.
I'm not sure how much of what makes both these characters work is there on the page.
Fleet the term of imprisonment on good behaviour.
I think certainly there's enough to get by.
The hunt.
And despite the obvious thing that this episode is mostly remembered for, which is, just heard it there, young ladies in tight red leotards running around with whips,
How fortunate that you never cease to amuse me, Craig.
I do feel that this episode is realised in perhaps a slightly more first series way than
I'll put his thoughts on the screen.
than you might have been expecting at this point in the series. Here we go, we're going to see inside Koenig's head, what's important to him. Clips of eagles. Well, fair enough, he is the commander of Moonbase Alpha. It's probably what you'd see in my head as well.
Let us observe his friends.
No, they're not in this week's episode. Here we're going to see Helena looking thoughtful, Tony looking happy, Maya turning into a panther.
A metamorph.
And now a bird.
He's very attractive.
He's not in this week's one, love. Sorry.
I find especially appealing.
She's more for Koenig.
Does this species know passion?
How far do you want to go? Hugging Helena.
Very interesting.
Which, his spacecraft, his friends, or his romances?
The fact that clips from old episodes is the only way most of his co-stars actually made it into this episode.
Does he know how to produce immunity to the nerve bacteria on the home planet? Why didn't he die?
I don't know yet. The prisoners are beginning to wonder about things on the home planet. Tell them the truth now about Elna and they might understand.
Again, this is another nice relationship.
They will learn the truth someday.
Do you think the interrogator... This is Dora Reiser is the actress name. That's it, I've remembered now.
From our barrier against disaster.
She seems like a good woman who isn't 100% comfortable with what she's being asked to do.
They won't believe him. Their minds have been programmed to think my way.
Particularly with regards to the fact that everyone on their home planet is dead. She's one of the few people who knows. She also clearly has the ear of Elysia, and she's sort of begging her to do the right thing, but...
Cease interrogation.
Elysia's got a bit of a thing for power. And Koenig's been thrown in a cell with 3 other prisoners. One of them is Angus McGuinness,
I'm from Moonbase Alpha. Never heard of it.
Who was in Star Wars, the first Star Wars, and also Rogue One, in fact. He was the leader of the Y-Wing Squadron, I think.
Oh, wait a minute. Nobody said... You tell her we're not plotting an insurrection. All we plan is how to outwit the hunters. And that kind of plotting is permitted. You mean you want to be hunted? Oh, that's right. Spy, alien, whatever you are. We volunteer for the hunt. If we reach the sanctuary column, without being killed first, we get to go free. To go home.
So that's what everybody's running for. That's what Koenig saw.
To Elna, home planet.
Uh-oh.
Everybody's dead down there.
I love this reaction as well.
You're a liar.
You're a liar. I like that.
I saw all the people.
And of course, Elysia and the interrogator are watching all this on the screen.
My family's on their neck. Hold it!
Hold it, says Koenig just before punching someone in the face.
What killed all of them? And how come you didn't die? I don't know what killed them. Maybe some sort of a plague.
That is a slightly unsatisfactory part of the story. I think we don't ever actually find out what's killed everybody on Elna.
Attention, all
Is that the Alpha News Service sting from the first season?
prisoners. This is your weekly news from home planet.
Oh, here we go. This is a nice example of Elysia's power.
At midtime on Solar Day, both are doing well. Congratulations, Prisoner Brannick. There was a large...
Yep, just she can issue a news broadcast whenever she likes, saying whatever she wants, and completely undermining Koenig's position.
Everyone's dead on home planet. I don't understand. I know what I saw. And poor old Baron died the minute he stepped out of the transbeamer. I wonder how immune you'll be to a noose around your neck.
Koenig is saved from being strung up by the ladies with the whips. And again, this is rather a sort of pulp sci-fi-ish idea that...
Well, it would have been such a waste.
You know, you'd sort of see in like 1950s sci-fi, was it things like Catwomen of the Moon or similar.
I'm Elysia, overseer of this penal colony.
They thought you sent me up here to spy on them.
Which only goes to prove my contention. The prisoners who try to think are dangerous.
I really like Elysia as a character, and I kind of wish I almost wish you could lift up this episode and plonk it down in the first season and see how it would have played out there. I don't think it would have been one of the best episodes by any means, but I think the sort of the scheming qualities of particularly Elysia and her interactions with Krail and the Interrogator are...
We've probed your brain.
What? They are characters more in the style of the first season than many other guest villains in the second series. Their motivations are more genuine and more interesting.
Precisely 3 hours.
That was our brief reminder that Fraser and Alib are still on the case.
My people know where I am. They'll come for me.
Your people aren't in this episode.
Stay with me, and you will experience undreamed of pleasure. Well, until I tire of you.
What's your boredom quotient?
Well, that would be determined by you.
Alien spaceship is within our outer quadrant, on a direct course for us.
Put him behind this.
1 point to Koenig. Oh, okay. That's not Landau. There's a shot as the ladies start throwing their whips around. That was clearly a stunt double for Landau, which is odd considering he didn't actually have to do anything there except walk away. Koenig has now been locked in a sort of cell with a transparent door that just kind of appeared out of the wall. Fraser and Alib, I think, are finally on their way to Entra.
You are approaching the penal colony of Entra. Stay clear.
Our scanner shows the wreckage of one of our spacecraft.
No ship is permitted to land on this planet.
2 of our pilots are in that.
They died in the crash.
Then we must land to return them to Moonbase Alpha.
Your ship...
As much as I like Fraser, this episode I don't think it's a particularly good showing for him, aside from seeing him in command of Alpha.
We're coming into land. Shooting if we have to.
He doesn't seem particularly confident about all this.
Capability.
But then he's never been in charge of the whole base before. He's never had to carry the show before.
We're being scanned.
Oh, I love how confidently Alib says that as a great big unmissable green light is wafted all over the set.
They carry missiles.
Missiles? What happened to the laser?
Enough to penetrate our defense shield.
When did we have missiles?
Try to come through our defensive screen. Your electronic systems will burn out.
We've contacted our base. They know we intend to land. If we don't make it, Alpha will send more powerful weapons to blast your planet.
Yeah, I'm really scary. You better do as I say.
Do that.
Try us. You have 1 minute to decide.
Yeah, let's show them.
You lied.
No,
I love that we cut back to Koenig with his hand over his face. Just, oh God, Fraser, what are you doing?
We do not commit.
Like I said, I do genuinely like Fraser. I like that he is just this nice, average, reliable guy.
You are cleared to land.
But in this episode, he's not.
Controller will see that you touch down safely.
He's not got the presence to really carry this subplot. If he were the co-pilot for someone else, like Tony, for instance, then it might work.
They will only find evidence of 2 deaths. The one who has already died, and his.
Ah, they're going to fake 2 scorched bodies, and while the ladies with the whips get the prisoners to work, Koenig has been he's been given his own grey jumpsuit, just like all the other prisoners.
I'll go straight ahead.
And Krail is getting one of his fellow prisoners to dress up as Koenig and pretend to walk through the woods, leaving footprints, in order to fake Koenig's apparent death for Fraser and Alib.
The fence is switched off. Just go into the middle and take your clothes off.
Ooh.
You first.
And Roy Marsden's walking out to the point where this guy needs to take his clothes off. See, nothing's wrong. Roy Marsden can get through okay. He's grinning and happy. Everything's fine. So his inmate friend has followed him out there. Marsden goes back and he's cooked. And this is one of my favourite moments of the episode.
You promised you wouldn't do this.
Marsden looks so...
It's worse than the hunt.
Devastated by his friend's death.
Promise and self-preservation, Krail. What choice would you have made?
As he does quite a few times in this episode, you can see...
As you said.
The suffering on this planet genuinely affects him. So Fraser and Alib are here. I do like that Alib hasn't even been given any kind of introduction. It's just at this point in the series, you know, she is woman manning communication desk.
Fraser! Alib!
But Koenig knows who she is. Oh yeah, that's the shot. It just looks like a blob of chewing gum on an unconvincing model. I mean, you can see the flecks of paint, of the paintbrush in the white and the HD transfer.
I'm Fraser of Moonbase Alpha.
Alib, Communications Officer, Moonbase Alpha.
Her name badge says Amerson, I've just noticed. Another of the wonders of HD.
We have refreshments waiting.
Thanks, but we'd like to get to the scene of the crash as quickly as possible.
Under the circumstances, refreshments are not our top priority.
Oh, she must have... The Entron Catering Corps must be very devastated. I love that line. It's one of several very odd lines that Alib gets in the course of just 3 episodes. And again, she's a performer I like in this show. I kind of wish, much like with Sam Dastor, I wish they'd found her earlier. But sadly wasn't to be. Anyway.
The pilot section isn't totaled. They survived.
Fraser and Alib are rather relieved to find the Eagle is mostly intact.
Shortly after your spaceship crashed. And before we could reach them, they stumbled into one of our boundary fences.
And walked into it here.
Guided tour of charred clothes. There's first on our tour is the charred remains of Blake Main. Don't know who he was. We'll carry on.
Commander Koenig footprints go to here.
That's it. So a pile of charred clothes. I like the pan from Alib then to Fraser and off Fraser to Elysia and the interrogator. Is like, is he buying it? Is he buying it? Is this convincing enough to fool them? And of course, it is. That's it, they're going. They've not even asked if they can take the remains away with them, I don't think. And again, this is a good example of... Yeah, Alib is crying in the co-pilot's seat, and, you know, if that was Sandra sat there, it would carry weight. If it were Helena sat there, it would carry weight. And despite the fact that Alib is not the worst actress in this show, the fact that this is the first episode we've seen her in, her crying about Koenig's death means nothing. Anyway, Elysia is looking very smug. She has now got Koenig all to herself. Ooh. So Koenig has now been taken to Elysia's throne room, and she's changed into something a bit more comfortable. Koenig has also noticed the transmat tube in the corner of the room, or transmat chamber.
The transbeamer.
Transbeamer, sorry.
The magic door to the home planet.
The magic door to certain death.
Oh, that would have been a good title.
And I call it Hope.
Hope?
Hope is better than, was it creation or destruction?
The hope without which there would be nothing but despair. The hope that makes them eager to be the quarry on the hunt.
This is why Elysia is so fascinating. Aside from a really good performance from Hildegard Neal, the fact that she's not only holding on to power for its own sake, but she recognises
Can send them home.
the ways in which she can use it to keep morale up.
Example of double think.
Similar to your situation.
Not just for the Elnan prisoners who've been sent here, but also for Koenig.
You are dead.
Ooh. And she even has a little, I don't know what we call that, little laser paint stick thingy to...
This promises to be more enjoyable than I had anticipated.
Render him a bit more compliant.
In front of an audience?
Of course.
It's alright, you can kiss her. Helena's not in this week. Bane's off on another set. She won't get angry if you snog Hildegard Neal. And he does. And throws her into the nearest guard. That's it. Oh, he touched that lady in a rather inappropriate place as he threw her across the room, I believe. Now we have a camera pointing at one of these
Give the hunter the...
poor young ladies' spandex-clad bottoms. Yeah, I can't deny this episode is... It's a visual something. I try not to focus on that side of it because I think there is a genuinely good story underneath all this, supported by some wonderful performances. So I kind of let the slightly more
contempt for our...
fetishistic aspects of the costume design in this episode kind of I kind of let it slide. That's it. Koenig is now on the run, heading back for the Eagle, and Elysia is leading a whole squad of her soldiers after him. This is the point where that long cape she wears kind of seems like a liability. And again, although this set clearly is just studio set. I do like how they seem to have made a lot of good use of what must have been very limited space to have all these trees and plants and such in there. See, I've got half a dozen beautiful ladies running around in skin-tight spandex. I am concentrating on the trees. Oh, Koenig's found all the weapons on the eagle have been trashed. I've got to find something else to do. Homing transmitters. That's something we can do. Grab one of those. Activate. What else can he do before he leaves? Jump out the eagle. That's I'm a bit lost at this point. The model and the interior set and the exterior set of the eagle aren't quite matching up. Anyway, Koenig has made it out of there with a homing transmitter and a little blue cylinder of gas. I don't know if that's meant to be a fire extinguisher or something. Oh. Yep, his stunt double is using it on the ladies. And now we're having a bit of a fight with one. Again, that stunt double. I've never noticed that before, but that is very noticeable. Oh, and he punched one of the guard ladies in the face. She's not having any of that. Oh, maybe she is. Yeah, another punch.
There's no use trying to contact your people. Your signal cannot get through our defense shield.
Now that you know that, I'm going to let you throw me over your shoulder. Oh, Koenig's done quite well there.
He is walking in the direction of the main complex.
That's it, he's just strolling back. And all the guards are following him.
Interrogator? The alien is returning to our custody. Permit no one to interfere with his progress.
I like that she has to give that order considering that he's like 2 feet away from her and the set is not that large. But anyway, he's back in the throne room where the interrogator and Krail are waiting for him.
He will wait until Alicia arrives.
If there was one thing I could change about this, actually, I think I would have liked a scene with Koenig and Krail interacting with each other. Some kind of a conversation, just something.
I'm just making it more convenient for Alicia to transport me.
Transportation is...
Oh, he's making his way over to the transbeamer booth in the corner of the room.
What's more important, Alicia?
Aha! He's in.
So I've outwitted you.
If you attempt to activate the transbeamer, you will be disintegrated.
Oh, there's a threat.
But if she fires, she'll also disintegrate this transbeamer. And none of you will ever see home again.
Ah, yeah, because they've only got the one, apparently. Yeah, that's true. They've only got the one.
If there's no hope for the prisoners, we will be unable to control them.
We will find another way.
But what about us? Some of us are completing our tour of duty.
Oh yeah, the guards. She hasn't thought of that. It's not just about her and the prisoners.
The alien is full of surprises.
Yes, Krail. He's treacherous and devious.
I think Krail's enjoying this, though.
Beamer.
Hear me first.
Yep, he's gonna make a speech. He likes making his speeches, does Krail?
There is talk amongst the prisoners that the alien claimed all are dead on Elna.
Yes, that's true.
No.
Alicia knows it, but she's lied to you.
I do like the interrogator's look of, uh-oh, we are so screwed.
If everyone were dead on Elna, why would he want to go there?
Point counterpoint. Koenig's struggling to think of a retort to that.
Wait! Wouldn't you prefer death to torture?
What now?
To Alicia's brand of torture?
Oh.
Saris, order your guards to do their duty, or you end up in a cell.
Alicia's lies are your only prison.
And I believe this actress playing the guard Saris died reasonably young as well, which is rather...
If there's no death on Elna,
rather sad.
Alicia can follow and bring me back.
Oh, that's it. That's the challenge. That's the challenge she can't refuse. She can't lose face in front of her own people. She has to follow him, and he's gone.
I let him go.
Now she has to spin it. Oh, hey, the dead Elvis impersonator is back on Elna. Considering that the last time we were here, the guy with the moustache died exactly where that guy had previously died. Now the first dead guy's back again. Anyway, Koenig is signalling.
Code number Eagle 1.
It's impossible.
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out together, Bill. I also love that there's not even a hint at a reaction from anyone on Alpha. It's like, Koenig may be dead. Oh, who cares? Happens every week.
Just don't be and believe in an alien. He lies, I tell you.
Oh, Elysia's surrounded. And even the interrogator
Tell them he lies.
won't come to her aid.
I'm not political.
Oh, that's it. That's a burn. She's out. And at this point, Crail has more authority over the guards than Elysia does.
Crail.
And he's just a prisoner, and she's appealing to the people that she's been holding hostage.
Prove to them that Elna is what you say it is. Otherwise, they'll flay you alive.
Oh, that's it. He knows. He knows it's true, and he knows she can't resist.
And when I come back, they will worship me again.
But she has to have the last word.
Back, they'll curse you as a tyrant.
Which do you desire it to be, Crail?
Whichever gives us most hope.
That's it. This is why I think I genuinely think of this as a good episode, because of those kinds of interactions. It is more a first season dynamic for guest characters than a second season one. So it's like, from a production standpoint, this may be a bit sort of at the tired end of the season. Let's just get these last few episodes done. But I think
I'll take you with me.
There's a better story and better characters going on here than that. Anyway, Elysia's now followed Koenig to Elna. I do hope I've been getting those names right all the way through this. It's very difficult to keep track. And after a couple of blasts from her gun... Oh. And she's dead. But we've still got... Yeah, as far as I know, we didn't get any explanation for what killed all the people on this planet, nor why it doesn't affect the Alphans, but here comes Fraser and Alib to rescue Koenig, and considering that Koenig is walking away from a pile of dead bodies, I do find this an odd choice of incidental music to end the episode on. That is Tony beer brewing music to end an episode on. Anyway, that was Devil's Planet, which as I said, I think I come to like more and more as the years go by. It, from a visual standpoint, there are elements in there that maybe sort of override the genuinely positive qualities that this episode has. In particular, the characters, the dialogue, and three great guest performances: Hildegard Neal, Roy Marsden, and Dora Reiser. Some really good stuff here.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Another great one. It's so nice to just visit one episode at a time and give it time to breathe and examine it and
absolutely
take the mickey out of it a bit and observe some interesting bits, all that sort of stuff. So,
have we ever worked out, I think we did, but I can't remember, how long it's going to take to get through every episode of every Gerry Anderson production ever for the Randomiser?
When's he going to finish?
Yes.
We did work it out.
Yeah.
I think it's
then?
2036 or something.
Right.
Well, by that time, there'll be a whole new swathe of Anderson productions for them to go through. So don't worry, Chris. We're going to keep you going into your old age.
Yes, now we've had more emails, and I'm going to read them out, whatever you say. Yeah, they've all been sent in to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Now, here's an interesting one, because it's been sent in by Neil Sims, and that's of particular relevance to me, because I played a character in My Parents Are Aliens called Neil Sims. Isn't that strange? Yeah, anyway, Neil says, "Hi Jamie, Richard, Chris, and fellow Podsterons. I've been listening for a while now, starting at Pod 1 and finally catching up to real time a few months ago. It's rekindled my love of the world of Gerry Anderson, and I'm really enjoying the banter, interviews, and randomizer each week. I was interested to hear in Pod 113 about the international rescue themed Virgin trains. I used to travel regularly from Stafford to Euston, and quite often I would see the Hood parked and moored on a short siding next to platform 1. Usually it wasn't there by the time I returned in the evening, though, so I guess Thunderbirds had gone. Bachmann used to make an 00, or is that 00 gauge, I would guess, model
00, I think.
Of the Class 57 train in Virgin Trains International Rescue livery, coincidentally called the Hood. Have a look for Bachmann 32-76-2DS. I always wondered if the model train had working headlights to mimic the Hood's light-up eyes. Kind regards from Neil." That's nice, isn't it?
And on the great detail.
Yeah, on the last podcast, says Stephen Carson, it was mentioned that Space Police featured in a music video. Yes, we had an email from someone who told us he had worked on that very video, featuring a female singer, and had used footage from Space Police, but he couldn't remember quite what it was. Well, Sir Stephen, I can reveal that it was Project 90, and there's actually a short clip on the internet. No doubt someone has the full thing. Lead vocals are by Venice and backing vocals by Mistress T. You can hear various vocal clips from Thunderbirds in it. I hope this helps, from Stephen. Yeah, and I did have a quick look. Just go onto YouTube and search for Project 90. It's very odd. It's very, very strange. It's sort of Thunderbirds mashup theme with some vocals over the top. Set to some clips from the Space Police pilot with Shane Rimmer and so on. And
I think
very odd.
It was a bit of an odd one. I think that Mummy A talks about it in part 2 or 3 of her interview. If you want to go back to those episodes and hear there.
Okay.
A very strange, odd moment in time there.
So thank you for all your emails, all of them sent in to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. It's always lovely to hear from you. And I will try my best to read out more next week. And maybe even next week we'll pop over to our Facebook group as well, see how they're getting on. And I'll take a look at Twitter, where you can hashtag us, Gerry Anderson Podcast. And you can tag him, I'm Jamie Anderson, him just over there getting into that car, Chris Dalek, and me, Richard N. James.
And while you're on Twitter, make sure that you've posted a screenshot of you listening to this episode with the hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast. Do it there on Twitter and over on Instagram as well. And on the 29th of August, I will select one winner from each location to get some goodies from my office. Wow, very exciting.
It really is.
Please, if you haven't already done that, do it right this moment.
Does
Thank you
anyone
very
stand
much.
a chance of winning Ernie the dog, perhaps?
Ernie the dog is priceless and will never leave here.
So sweet.
Sorry, but no. I'm just looking around to see if there's anything particularly exciting I might be giving away. I tell you what, I've just installed some new Venetian blinds. So I've got the old curtain rail supports. They might be part of the package.
I'm not sure that's really the sort of thing people were expecting.
Oh, I see. No, but I've got. I'll tell you what. I've got some Firestorm Kickstarter backers, Blu-rays and DVDs. I've got some postcards. I've got some books. I've got some CD soundtracks and vinyl stuff. All sorts of goodies. And I'll do you a nice little package if you would be so kind as to do that screenshot. And if you've done that and you're feeling even nicer, then you can leave us a rating and a review. Now, I think that's probably enough requests. I feel like I've asked a lot of our Podsterons.
You really have, haven't you?
I'll stop.
I would. Yeah, fine. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
If you could have one thing from my office, Richard James.
Yes.
Other than Ernie the dog.
Oh.
Or me.
Yeah.
What would it be?
I think it would be, is it Davros in the Captain Scarlet hat?
Oh, you want the Davros head?
Yeah.
The Genesis Davros head. Yeah, it's quite a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, of course I would, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd put it beside me on my pillow as I went to bed each night.
Poor Charlotte.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hoping that you would say something Gerry Anderson related.
I see. Of course, because it's the Gerry Anderson podcast. Do you know what I'd really like? And I cast my eyes over it with envy every time I come round. It's the big eagle on your flag.
Yes.
The Space 1999 eagle. It's beautiful.
Yes. Actually, it shows how long it has been since you've been over because it's moved to the other side of the room now. But yes, it is. 44-inch lovely eagle. Gosh, it's a stunner.
Yeah, it'd have to be that.
I'm just looking at it now.
All right, to rub it in.
I think I might go and give it a little stroke. And
all right, well, I'm going to have another cream tea. So.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, who's the winner now?
Well, I'm just depressed now. Okay, bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.